Okay, for the second screencast today, we're looking at the fixed layout again. This time you'll see on the screen I've got my InDesign document set up. It's a double page spread originally in print, but I've now organised it so that the two spreads together have some content on all of the pages. So I've added content on the left hand side, if you see here, where I've got some originally blank pages, and the whole book will now start with this large image spreading across the two pages, making a landscape image. Okay, but how can we make this appear a little bit more compelling? Well, one of the things we can do is to animate the images, or make the images appear dynamically, using the animation panel, selecting this image here, for example. I'm now going to choose from one of the presets, simply fade in. This is going to fade in. So obviously we can export this to the EPUB and have a look at it, but before we do that, just see here we've actually got a preview panel, and you can see that that actually worked there. So let's just run through that again. I'll click on the icon, then you can see that that came up. Let's just slow that down a little bit so that you can see that a little bit more effectively, because we can change the duration. I'm going to change this to a 3-second fade in. It's just going to happen once, and I'm just going to run that again. So here we are. This appears on the screen gradually. Okay, so one of the other things we can do is to have different types of animation. So I'm going to select this second image on the second spread, and I'm going to make this fly in from the left. As you can see, that's already been selected. Once again, we've got settings. We can set the duration of it. Let's make it a little bit longer, just to demonstrate it clearly. But also you'll see that when we have an object that is going to fly in from one side or another, you do have a path. This is the default path for this particular image, and we can change that to whatever we like. So we can actually pick that line up and move it wherever we like. But let's actually just look at this in action. Okay, so that image appears to come in from the left hand side. That's good. Okay. Take this page here and do something a little bit different for the object on the left hand side of the spread. First of all, I'm going to make an animation for this object. Going back to my animation panel, I'm going to choose that this will fly in from the left again. But rather than having it happen when we reach the page, on page load in other words, I'm going to turn that off, because what we're now going to do is to create a button that makes that action happen. So let's first of all go down here and make sure that this is hidden until animated. So in other words, the object won't be there, the graphic won't be there until it's animated. So make sure you tick that on there. And now what we want to do is to go into the object that we want to make into a button. So we go to the Buttons and Forms panel, and with that object selected, I'm now going to turn that into a button. It has moved, but that's all right. We're going to move it back in a moment, and I'm going to give it the name of Athens. Now what is going to happen is we are going to click it and let the mouse button go on a computer, and then that action will happen. On the other hand, if we're looking at it on an iPad, it's simply tapping with the finger. So what action do we want to happen? We want to animate the object that it's found on the page. So the object is already there. It's called ancientathens.jpg, and I simply want to play it. That's all I want to do. Now let's just run through this. I'm just going to move this back into position first of all, and now we're just going to have a look and see what this looks like. Let's just make sure that we still have that in the right position. Okay, so let's actually have a look at this and see what this looks like with the preview window. So there's nothing there on the screen at the moment. We click here and this comes onto the screen. Okay, but it's doing it again each time that I click on it, and that's fine, except that it might be worth considering another possibility, and that is that although this is an animated object, we can still make that into a button, and you'll see why in a moment. If I now go to my buttons and turn that into a button, the action on that button, let's just call it Large Athens. The object itself can be a button, and it can hide itself. So I'm going to say show hide buttons and forms. What button do I want to hide? I want to hide the button that's actually called Large Athens, although at the moment it still thinks it's called button 3. But now let's just preview that. So we show the animation, we click on the image, and it hides it. If you wanted to do that, you know, that's the way this works. So the logic is this shows the object by animating it in. We click on the object itself to hide itself. Okay, so what else can we do here? Well, one of the things that we could be thinking about is how we might want to make use of multimedia. So what I'm going to do is to go back to the very first screen here, and we're going to look at the possibility of adding a little bit of music when the ebook opens. So, okay, we've found a little bit of music. Now, placing music is very similar to placing graphics. We simply go to the Place menu item, look for the particular piece of multimedia that we've got. I'm just going back to my media folder, where in my audio I already have something under ambient here, which I'm going to use, which is Mendelssohn's Overture to Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm going to open that and place it over on the just on the pasteboard for the moment. If we go to our media panel, which is under the interactive media section, you'll see that that's already set up, and I can just play it like that. Now we can say that that plays on page load. On the other hand, we might need to set it up so we can actually stop the audio playing if we want. So let's actually just bring that onto the screen. Because I don't want it to be seen, the controller that is, I'm going to simply hide that by sending it to the back. Arrange, send to the back. Okay, so now let's actually just view this by going to our preview window again. Okay, now there are a number of issues that we already have noticed. The first thing is that the object itself, that is the audio, does need to be on the page, but we need to hide it. But unfortunately it shows momentarily because we've got the image fading up. So we need to do something about that. We will need to really hide it completely. And the way that we can do this is to just move this out of the way for the moment, create a text or a box, put this box on the screen and make sure that this is filled with white. Okay, so it's a solid object, and then I'm going to place this audio, making sure that it is sent right to the back. Okay, so that shouldn't now show. The other thing that you may have noticed is that there's quite a delay while that music actually plays, and it's very important that when we have music like that, we need to make sure that we don't have any silence at the beginning of that music at all. Now, obviously, this piece of music does sort of start very subtly, so we will need to make sure that we reorganise that slightly, or edit the audio, I should say. I'm just sending it slightly one step back. Okay, and then this needs to be also sent further back. Okay, now let's just check to see that that works. Yeah, we no longer see the controller. The music now plays. Although we do need to edit that audio to make sure that there's absolutely no silence at the beginning. Now what we will find when we create the ebook is that that music will stop when we move to the next page. So automatically then, by simply clicking on the page itself, we will then move to the next page. However, what we can do is to have this object, which is currently simply animating, we can also turn that into a button and make sure that when we click it, it will actually turn the sound off. So once again, let's just have a look at that. The music will play, but if we don't want to listen to the music, we simply click and the music will stop. Now, it's always a very good idea to consider when you're using music or audio indeed, to set up your own controller. If you wanted to have some sort of controller to make sure that you can control the video in some way, or the audio in some way. We can use the default controllers that you often see with audio and video, but on the other hand you can quite easily create your own buttons, and that will be the subject of the next screencast.